Chair, I bam the phone.
Right.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Are we good to go?
Yes, Chair.
All right, that's fine. Honorable colleagues, good morning, and welcome to our meeting this morning.
Good morning, Chair.
With the SIU, welcome the head of unit and his team in the briefing on the cases insofar as ESKOM is concerned, following our oversight visit among others and the continuous over ESKOM, and of course on Friday. So get this briefing on consequent things are going in that regard. So this meeting is for those purposes this morning, messages and last week. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and one is making good progress. So I would like to welcome all colleagues and all those in the meeting, our support staff, and then without any further, head of unit of the SIU to then take us through the presentation, which was circulated to members, and then we'll take questions from there. So, honorable members, I hope that is in order. And once again, welcome. Babu TV, over to you and your team.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson of SCOPA, Honorable members of SCOPA. We appreciate the opportunity to engage and brief SCOPA on our investigation at ESKOM, which have been going on under the proclamation R11 of 2018, which mandated SIU to conduct various investigation focus areas. Chair, before I proceed, I'm joined by my colleagues. It's Mrs. Claudia O'Brien, who is the lead investigator in this investigation, and she will be taking the honorable members through the presentation. I'm also joined by my colleague, Mr. Leonard Lekhetwa, who's the Chief National Investigating Officer. He provides oversight on this investigation. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Mr. Khanyaho, who's the spokesperson for the SIU. So, Chair, without wasting time, I would like to, with your permission, Chair, just hand over to my colleague, Mrs. Claudia O'Brien, who will go through the presentation, and then I will close off when I deal with the and summarize the presentation itself. But in between, if there's any need, I will also come in to clarify some of the issues that I would like the committee to get more information on. Thank you. Ms. O'Brien, over to you.
Good morning, Honourable Chairperson and Honourable Members, and thank you very much for this opportunity to brief you this morning on the progress made by the SIU so far on this ESKOM investigation. Apologies, I just need to learn to work this presentation mode on Zoom. Apologies, I'm just trying to find the next. Apologies, if I can maybe just get some assistance. Okay, from beginning, I think that will see. Okay, there we are. Apologies for that. So the SIU's mandate, as we have previously presented to the honourable members, is in terms of Proclamation 11 of 2018, and it's quite extensive. It covers the procurement of coal, the procurement of coal transportation services, the procurement of diesel, the appointment of McKinsey, Trillian and regiments. It covers the maladministration and effective performance by service providers at Medupi, Kusile and Ngula. And it also covers conflicts of interest. And in this regard, we look at two aspects. Firstly, the failure by ESKOM officials to declare their private interests. And secondly, we look at ESKOM officials who are doing business with ESKOM. In January 2020, our mandate was extended by Proclamation 3 of 2020. And that proclamation extended our period of review from 1 April to 31 January, apologies, from 1 April 2010 to 31 January 2020. And in addition to the focus areas, there has been a number of matters added, including the procurement of cloud computing services, software licenses and support services, as well as 2 engineering and project management consulting services contracts at Matla and Majuba. And we started our investigation in August 2018. So in line with our mandate, the SIU investigated the following areas for detailed investigation. 135 officials who we identified are doing business with ESKOM. Entities linked to these officials have received in excess of 6 billion rand from ESKOM. We're also looking at 34 red flagged former or current ESKOM officials. These red flags were or resulted from a lifestyle audit that was conducted by ENS at the request of ESKOM. Then there's 5,452 ESKOM officials who failed to submit their declarations of interest. We're looking at 3 Tegeta coal supply agreements, the Brakfontein Optimum and Korenfontein agreements. We're looking at 20 build contractors relating to 29 packages, 14 coal transportation service providers, 7 diesel suppliers, then the 2 contracts for cloud computing and IT services, and the 2 engineering projects at Matla and Majuba. Okay, so to start with the conflicts of interest, we have identified 324 ESKOM officials who have linked or who are linked to entities that are ESKOM vendors. 135 of these officials have been identified as conducting business with ESKOM. And then as previously stated, 5,452 officials failed to submit their declarations of interest. Our outcomes to date, we have made 5,512 referrals to ESKOM to institute disciplinary proceedings. 60 of these referrals are in respect of officials who are either doing business with ESKOM or who failed to declare their interests in outside business entities. And then we're still in the process, or there's 134 cases that we are currently working on and others that we still have to get to. In 15 of these instances, ESKOM has commenced with disciplinary proceedings. 11 of the matters are ongoing and 4 have been completed. Two officials were found guilty and 2 were found not guilty. 6 of the matters have been closed by ESKOM due to the attrition of staff. 4 officials resigned, and in 4 instances, management decided not to implement proceedings. And then we've made 5,452 referrals in respect of officials who failed to submit their declaration of interest forms. These were referred in September 2020. In terms of conflict of interests, we've made 7 referrals to the NPA so far, and we've got 8 that are in the process of being prepared. In relation to all ESKOM officials that are doing business with ESKOM, there will be criminal referrals. Also, in instances where officials resigned from ESKOM, if there is evidence that those officials did business with ESKOM, we will still proceed with criminal action against them. Then in terms of the lifestyle audits, as indicated earlier, 34 red flagged officials have been referred to the SIU. So far, we've referred 8 of these officials for disciplinary proceedings. 7 officials have resigned. And as I stated, in appropriate instances, we will still proceed with the referrals to the NPA. And 19 investigations are still ongoing. Then in terms of the coal supply agreements, firstly, in February 2020, the SIU brought an application in the High Court to set aside the Brakfontein coal supply agreement, which is valued at 3.7 billion rand. And the court granted that application in February 2020. Council has also been briefed to institute action to recover losses suffered by ESKOM in relation to this contract, which we estimate is in the region of 1 billion. Then the SIU, together with ESKOM, have instituted action against 12 parties in relation to the optimum coal mine purchase in the amount of 3.8 billion. That matter is currently in progress. Then in relation to the Korenfontein coal supply agreement, we are in the process of doing a preliminary investigation. Our results reflect that there was a 6.9 billion rand increase in the contract value after acquisition of this mine as part of the purchase of the Optimum Coal Holdings entity. Since June 2018, Korenfontein has failed to supply ESKOM with the monthly contractual tonnage required in terms of the CSA, and the CSA terminates in 2023. Our investigation is ongoing in this regard, and should we find it appropriate, we shall also go to the courts to ask for the setting aside of the contract and to recover any losses incurred. Then in terms of the bulk projects, we are currently covering about 29 contract packages. At Kusile, we're looking at 21. At Medupi, there's 5 matters to be looked at. At Matla and Majuba and Ngula, there's 1 matter each that we are currently investigating. As I indicated earlier, these packages relate to 20 bulk contractors. We have started our investigation in relation to 19 of the packages, and the remaining packages those investigations must still commence. Then I'll be presenting some examples to you of the modus operandi that we found at the build projects. The first one is a case of unauthorized gratification paid by 4 build contractors. In this instance, we found suspicious payments totaling 136 million by 4 main contractors at Kusile to certain subcontractors, who in turn channeled unlawful payments totaling 44.4 million to 4 ESKOM officials that we have identified. Our investigations in relation to 3 of the 4 contractors are at an advanced stage, and the remaining contractor we still need to commence that investigation. We have found evidence pointing to the commission of fraud, contraventions of PACOCA, corruption, and money laundering. The outcome so far is that the officials involved have been referred for disciplinary proceedings. 2 of the officials resigned when they received suspension letters, 2 senior officials, and the other official was dismissed following a disciplinary action. 1 official, the remaining official, resigned before our investigation commenced. Then also in relation to these contractors, 27 referrals have been made to the NPA of individuals and companies who were complicit in this matter. And the SIU is working very closely with the NPA's independent directorate in respect of these matters. So far, 4 people have been arrested, 2 of the 4 ESKOM officials and 2 private individuals who represent 7 business entities who were all involved in this scam. In terms of civil proceedings, Council has been briefed by the SIU to institute proceedings against 3 of the 4 contractors for the recovery of overpayments estimated at a total 2.78 billion rand. The one contractor, we're looking at about 780 million. The second contractor, we're looking at 1.2 billion, or the contract is worth 1.2 billion, which we would be looking at setting aside and then recovering overpayments made to the contractor between 700 million and a billion. The third contractor, we're looking at approximately an overpayment of 1 billion rand there as well. What is of importance here as well is that many of these contractors are still on site and are still in the process of delivering on their projects. And so there are ongoing claims against ESKOM, and currently in relation to these 3 contractors, their claims against ESKOM are in the region of about 1.9 billion. What we have found is that very often these claims arise out of deliberate mismanagement of the contracts by ESKOM contract managers or officials who act in collusion with the different contractors. In appropriate instances, the SIU also assists ESKOM's legal teams to defend claims against ESKOM and dispute arbitration board proceedings. And so far, in one instance, we were able to save 400 million in relation to a claim that was made against ESKOM. Then another instance is where fraudulent claims were submitted by a build contractor. In this instance, the build contractor submitted inflated claims. He also made false declarations and failed to declare his interests in businesses, as well as his links to officials within ESKOM, senior officials within ESKOM. We have estimated that the total fraudulent claims submitted by this build contractor total 66.9 million. We also found evidence pointing to money laundering, racketeering, and contravention of PCOCA. And then there are also a few further claims that were submitted by the build contractor in relation to 3 other contracts which we are investigating. Our outcomes in this instance, we've made 5 NPA referrals and 5 AFU referrals against 4 individuals and 1 company. In this matter, again, we're working closely with the Independent Directorate as well as the AFU. And the AFU will be launching an application to attach properties belonging to the implicated persons shortly. In respect of civil proceedings, here we are also in the process of referring evidence to the State Attorney for purposes of instituting civil proceedings to recover 66.9 million rand. Then the last example is of a multinational company that self-reported the results of an internal investigation that they conducted. Their investigation revealed that high-ranking officials within ESKOM were working in collusion with the company and certain subcontractors to secure a contract of more than 2 billion rand, as well as variation orders to that contract in excess of 1 billion rand. In terms of the outcomes in this case, we're working with the Independent Directorate. We have referred evidence and are in the process of referring further evidence against 15 individuals and 10 entities which are currently under investigation in relation to this matter. In this regard, we are working closely with the NPA, the ID, the AFU, SARS, the FIC, the Hawks, the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, the United States DOJ, as well as the FBI, and also with prosecuting authorities in Germany and Switzerland in relation to witnesses or suspects who are foreign nationals. In terms of civil proceedings, we have briefed counsel to bring an application to set aside the contract and to recover overpayments, which is estimated at 1 billion rand. The company in question has approached the SIU and ESKOM, and we are currently engaged in settlement discussions with them. The company has undertaken to repay any proven overpayments and also to support the criminal investigation. Then in terms of cloud computing, software and licenses, that investigation is good progress has been made. We have found evidence there as well of the payment of kickbacks totaling 100 million that was paid to a subcontractor who was used to secure ESKOM contracts for the contractor. We are in the process of referring criminal cases in that regard as well, and we will consider the civil remedies once the investigation is complete. And then just to summarize, I don't know, Advocate Mutibi, if you want to take the slide from here or if I should present these slides as well.
Honorable Chair, no, thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Honorable Chair, just to really summarize, this was really an, if you call it, an update briefing to the committee in view of the briefing that was given to the committee before, but we tried to be as comprehensive as possible on the outcomes so that the committee can see the progress and the outcomes that have been made. It's really comforting for me to see that we've identified this number of officials totaling 5,523, and this is along the lines of conflict of interest, which includes failure to submit declarations. More often, we have observed that this is where really things start to go wrong, when officials at all levels in the organization delve into business interests which are not declared, and they start either effecting overrides, interfering with procurement processes, and just turning a blind eye on some of the interventions that they should do. My colleague earlier on mentioned some of the claims that the contractors are approaching ESKOM on, and that such claims more often arise as a result of deliberate mismanagement of contracts by ESKOM contract managers and officials. It can clearly only be explained by that those officials would have the interest to benefit on corrupt basis from those processes. So we've done that. 5,452 officials failed to submit declarations, and 60 conflict of interest matters. Those have been processed. We expect that the ESKOM management would take action on that. 8 referrals in relation to officials in respect of whom lifestyle audits were conducted by ESKOM in conjunction with ourselves. We've already mentioned that in the body of the report. And the 3 referrals in relation to build contracts. 2 officials resigned and 1 has been dismissed. And as we always say, where officials resign and there is evidence pointing to criminal action, we will pursue them. There's evidence pointing to the fact that they've also participated in causing damages to ESKOM. We will also pursue them as part of the civil litigation process. Again, in summary, disciplinary referrals which are in progress, it's 134, and we continue to engage with ESKOM in terms of the status and what becomes of those disciplinary processes. Resignations, we're informed that there's 13, and we will deal with them on the same basis. While they terminate the employer-employee relationship, they will not get away from the criminal or civil litigation process where evidence points to wrongdoing on their part. As we mentioned, there's one dismissal. This really clearly indicates consequence management on the part of the ESKOM management, And we are really happy that this kind of consequence management is demonstrated by ESKOM. The next slide. Ms. O'Brien, can you take us to the next slide, please?
Apologies. There.
Okay, as we have said, there's also quite a number of referrals to the National Prosecuting Authority, 39 of them in number, and the offenses vary from corruption, fraud, and other offenses that have been identified. As my colleague indicated, there's also asset forfeiture referrals that are 32 in number, and the values have been indicated in the body of the presentation. In this regard, my colleague did indicate that we are working together with NPA and AFU, including the Investigative Directorate. We would really like to see those prosecutions following. Matters which were referred to civil litigation and they were instituted. We've already indicated that the Brackfontein and Optimum, that matter was adjudicated in court and the contract was set aside to the value of 3.7 billion. Of course, it doesn't end there. Setting aside a contract is one action. We would like to see the recoveries from there. And we are, our civil litigation and the investigators are working together to ensure that any assets that we can really lay our hands on and convert them into recoveries that we would like to see happening. Matters in which council has currently been briefed, there's 6 matters that we are busy engaging, and most of those have been referred to in the body of the presentation. The honorable members, you have heard that in some instances, once the investigation is underway, some of the companies really come forward and they've approached us and ESKOM with offers to settle. In that matter, we will make seriously sure that there are no prejudices on the part of ESKOM and government in general. We will ensure that any matter that's settled is settled in the interest of ESKOM. So those matters are underway, and values in which matters in which council has been briefed is about 3.9 billion contracts that will be set aside, and we are looking at the recoveries of over 8 billion. 8.7 billion is aimed to be recovered. The savings, as we have said in the body, that in one of the instances we have saved ESKOM about 400 million, and that was in those instances where there were claims that would have been as a result of mismanagement of the contracts. The investigating team would identify those and quantify the amounts and ensure that ESKOM does not pay those amounts. Systemic recommendations, there we have made about 6 of them. And the systemic recommendations, honorable members, this would be in instances where we recommend some improvements in the system or in the processes, be it risk management, contract management, or any other process that the investigation may have identified that it required improvement. So, Honorable Chair and honorable members, we really heartened to see this kind of outcomes which we have reached. We believe that if all of this are actioned as we intend to, we will send the appropriate message. We will send a message that sends out the deterrence on the part of those who may still be subject or planning to do nefarious acts. And we would like to root those out. These are really quite significant outcomes. So, Honorable Chair, we will end here and take questions that the honorable members may have. Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thank you very much to the head of unit, Advocate TV. Colleagues, there is the presentation. I've already seen that Honorable Van Minen has indicated wanting to speak. So if colleagues can do that. Honorable Van Minen, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just battling with the screen. I've still just got the end of the presentation on it. But let me proceed. I've got several questions here. Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. I just want to say it's always a pleasure to hear from the SIU, and I really must commend them on the work they're doing. And on that, my first issue is I just want to know from the SIU, given the amount of work they're having to do with ESKOM, not to mention all the other spaces where they're doing really good work, their capacity to actually get through the work timeously, are they at this point capacitated to do that? Are they finding themselves overstretched? Because obviously at the end of the day, their efficacy is going to be affected by how thinly they're actually spread across all the various departments and investigations. That's the first thing. Then, I mean, we have a whole basket of matters here. There are internal proceedings that follow. There are criminal investigations and the civil litigation. Now, whereas obviously the internal disciplinaries are very important, as are the criminal investigations, it's really the civil litigation that ultimately sees taxpayers' monies being reclaimed. So I want to come back again and again to what are the realistic possibilities of significant amounts of these wasted funds actually being reclaimed. Let's start with Brockfontein, for example, that coal matter. They talk about reclaiming losses to ESKOM. What are the sort of possibilities of that actually happening realistically? With Kroonfontein, why was there a failure to supply the tonnage required? I mean, I understand that they're running the investigation, but what was the reason for that failure? I want to touch on the Kusile gratification matter. So, of the officials, there have been referrals to the MPA of two of them. What is happening with the other officials? I mean, I realize that they have resigned, but in terms of the criminal investigations, are all of them being referred? Are they still being investigated? The build contractor with the fraudulent, massive fraud here, I would imagine that that build contractor is no longer working with ESKOM or for ESKOM. And then also with the cloud computing, the 100 million in kickbacks, again, coming back to my original question, what are the realistic chances of actually reclaiming funds in that regard? Thanks very much.
Okay, Honorable Mente.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Chairperson. No, Chair, I don't want to know a lot from SIU. All I want, because the details are clear, is just for us to get them from ESKOM as to how far are everything else, where ESKOM has received referrals to their side. But NPA and others, the committee will see how we schedule those follow-ups. But what I'm interested in is the list of names. All these officials that are mentioned here. Can the SIU avail the list of names so that when we deal with ESKOM, we deal with the names we know? Because ESKOM is going to give us their own table, and we have no certainty then if they will be providing us the actual names which SIU is referring to. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Mente. Colleagues, any further colleagues want to make a comment, contribution, ask questions?
Comment, Chair.
All right, Babu Somya, over to you, Babu.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Let's appreciate the report by SIU. it's really giving us a hope that things will somewhat normalize in as far as ESKOM operations are concerned. One area which I note, probably I would need the comment from SIU on, is that they are able to, one, to investigate. After the investigation, they make a number of referrals. As it is the case, more than 30 referrals which are made either to the NPA or AFU, and on their part, as SIU, they will proceed in a number of areas that they're empowered on, meaning therefore, even the progress in terms of speed of finding solution on these matters would hang on other parties to reach finality on the areas that are much more of a higher risk in as far as criminality, corruption is concerned. And the movement from SIU would have been somewhat be a movement which seeks to attain the objectives as set in terms of their own act one way or the other. The second thing is that based on the same referrals, you'd find out that a number of findings would be made on internal arrangements, on internal systems, and even at that point, there would have to be some kind of a linkage between the timing of the finding made by SIU and the timing to act in invoking the internal arrangements and systems, whether it's on the disciplinary processes and so forth, so an institution should deal with those. And thereafter, you'd find what they are referred to, either an individual resigned, an individual who has been found on the other side of the law, not being available in the course of such an action, or a delay in terms of such processes that relate to matters of disciplinary processes. The last matter is on a number of those failures in as far as declarations are concerned. More than 5,000 a number, you see, of employees who have been found not have made such declarations. And in terms of finality of that matter, is left to be dealt with by the institution per se, ESKOM in this instance. Meaning, therefore, Chair, it might be from our side that would need to find out from ESKOM how far have they gone in as far as these other areas that relate to their own action after the SIU has made these findings, which are very interesting, which are very encouraging, which I think we need to appreciate as the committee. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Babu Somyo. Mamachao, and then Umamos Debul.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning all. I have been covered by the previous speakers, but just two questions that I would like to know from Advocate Mutebi is that, are there any timeframes that they have in terms of the 8.7 recoveries? Because my worry is the pace, whether maybe they've got that enough capacity to deal with these cases, as the previous speaker alluded to. And again, are they satisfied with the pace of ESKOM in terms of implementing disciplinary actions against those that are affected? Looking at 5,452 vis-a-vis the 134 progress report. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mamachao. Mamos Debula.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. On that one dismissal employee, how much money have been recovered? SCOPA is not only concerned about termination of the employment, but money must also be recovered. It would have been to engage the NPA as well in order to determine that prosecution also take place expeditiously. On the 7th, who resigned on lifestyle audits? What positions do they hold in the organization? You want to know that, Chairperson?
All right, Mam Zibla, thank you very much. I'm sure Advocate Mutibi and his team have gotten that full set of questions. I just think three things on my side, Mutibi and your team. One, obviously, we welcome the work that you are doing and have been doing, and that you are always readily available to report. And so I think that is something which should continue, because it inspires the confidence in law enforcement agencies, but individually. But the problem comes in when we place all of this work as part of the conveyor belt of consequence management and successful prosecutions, and that you find thorough investigations like we have done not gaining the necessary traction when it comes to actually ensuring that people go behind bars, are arrested, and that there are recoveries. And so whilst there is the heightened national mood of positivity insofar as all the lessons seen by the Hawks, Usbahle M is who? Can thank you. So whilst there's a heightened mood of positivity about the arrest that we have seen in the country by the Hawks, amongst others, the real question becomes whether these arrests and these investigations translate into successful prosecutions and recoveries, and of course the termination of contracts where there have been irregular appointments and contracts and so on. So the question, Advocate Mutibi, becomes, do you have, can you give us the assurance as the committee and Parliament that the SIU has been thorough in its investigations and that these things will not come back to bite? Because you see, the SIU, the NPA rather, will often have problems moving forward with prosecuting because either there is insufficient evidence on one hand, or there has just been a shoddy investigative process that has unfolded, which then compromises the prospects of a successful case. And so I think we do just want that assurance, so that these arrests and these investigations are not cosmetic, nor are they there to allay public anxiety or to create a perception that things are being done. When it comes to crunch time, we don't get the results. I think the issue for all of us here is results. That's why colleagues are speaking about recoveries. That's why we want to know the turnaround time insofar as your work is concerned. So, and then the third point then is linked to the first issue I raised about a synchronized law enforcement agency, and to ascertain from the SIU on ESKOM matters specifically, but on investigative work generally, whether you are receiving the kind of cooperation that is required to enable you to do your work and to enable you to be effective and efficient in the course of work in which you are engaged with. All the things that you have pointed out today, of course, speak to a due process being followed, and you zooming into all the very real issues which are before ESKOM, whether it's coal and the irregular contractors and so on. But the issue is, will this translate into successful prosecutions? Will we be in a position to recover the losses that the state has incurred, and here specifically ESKOM? And so are you receiving cooperation from ESKOM itself in the work that you are doing? And I think then, of course, the questions that colleagues have asked are pertinent. So if we can then hand over to you, Babu Mthibi. Thanks.
Honorable Chair, thank you. Thank you very much once more for the questions from the honorable members. I'll start off with Honorable van Minen. The capacity for SIU to do the work. As I indicated before, that the capacity to do the work at the moment, it's there. However, we have identified that it requires improvement. And to that end, Honorable Chair and honorable members, we have identified during the strategy that we implemented, and we have also observed the growth of the proclamations because of the allegations that the public and other whistleblowers are reporting. We have seen an increase in proclamations. And we have then quantified the headcount and the skills that we will require. We have recently advertised just under 25 positions. And for those ones, we focused on the skills that we require immediately, which will be forensic accountants, legal specialists, and those legals would also add on the capacity in the civil litigation process. We are focused on recruiting cyber forensics, because as we do the investigations, there is a lot of cyber work that needs to be done, imaging of computers, following of information through those digital forums or platforms. So we require to improve. We do have the capacity at the moment. We are seeking to improve it. Now, in terms of doing the work timelessly, if we focus on the ESKOM investigation specifically, for example, Mrs. O'Brien has been the lead investigator in this investigation, and that also helps us from a point of view of continuity, from the point of view of ensuring focus. Of course, he's supported by the Chief National Investigating Officer, Mr. Lekgetho, who's in the meeting, and Mr. Lekgetho has got also his eyes also on other projects. For example, the COVID-19 investigation, he's also has his eyes there, and because of the magnitude, well, of course, this one is also having a huge magnitude, but because of all of them having such magnitude and public interest, we ensure that we don't really derail them due to taking over resources. We recently said, because of the COVID-19, we have rearranged some of the resources from other projects, but we have ensured that at least on the ESKOM side, where whatever operational need that they have identified, if we did not have internal capacity, we do also have a panel of service providers And we have put that panel deliberately. Of course, we don't just willy-nilly and easily use it because it doesn't come cheap, but some of the experts that we don't ordinarily employ, we would then source from that panel. So we have really sought to balance out and ensure that we don't slow down the investigation on the ESKOM side. And I think that balancing act is demonstrated by the results that we are showing to the honorable committee today. In terms of civil litigation, and I've asked my colleague, I should have indicated when I started, apologies, that we are also joined by our Chief Legal Officer, Dr. Wells. He'll also have his inputs in terms of civil litigation. We are, because that is the process, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, that we have, call it control over from end to end. So we investigate and we make findings that a certain contract has to be set aside, as an example, and that requires civil litigation. We are able to then take forward the civil litigation, either go to the ordinary courts, but of late we go to the special tribunal, and we proceed if the contract is set aside, like in this Braakfontein example that we have reported on. The contract has now been set aside. Its value was 3.7 billion. Now, what needs to be done going forward after the contract is set aside? There is an exercise that needs to be done in the judicial process, in this litigation process, which is called just and equitable determination by court. And that's where the legal teams and ESKOM would then indicate, for example, what has been the value delivered. If there's been no value, then we recover the whole amount. If there's been whatever inventories that we need to look at in terms of the failures in that regard, they will be quantified. But there's legal standards that's applied, and ultimately we get to the just and equitable order that needs to be recovered. It tends obviously to be subjected to the court processes. Although we would like to see it done quickly and speedily, there are really court processes that we have to abide by. Of course, when we now take it to the special tribunal, because it's a dedicated court, so to speak, we tend to see matters being adjudicated upon speedily. I will request my colleague at the moment, Dr. Wells, just to come in terms of the actual recoveries, and for example, to give just practical example, because this is a practical example. The contract has been set aside. We would like to appraise the committee in terms of what is happening currently in this matter and what is the status of it. Dr. Wells, are you able to appraise the committee, please, just to show that what are the steps taken to ensure that there's actual recovery, money is recovered back to the state or to ESKOM?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honourable members. Just briefly on this issue.
1 second.
The contract.
1 second. So, if I've just been requested that if we are on the platform, we turn on our cameras. This committee meeting is being carried live by Parliament. Thanks. Thank you.
Good morning once again, Chair and honourable members. Just briefly, in connection with the setting aside and the execution of possible judgment that the SIU will obtain, the present process that we're involved in is to quantify the losses or damages that has been suffered by ESKOM. That process is at an advanced stage, and that process will give us, once the amount has been determined and established, that will form the basis of our claim against Tegeta to recover any losses suffered by ESKOM. So we've been given an indication that process should be finalized within the next month or 2 months. And then we will institute summons as indicated by Advocate Mutibi. Now, the most important issue obviously is that once we get a judgment, and we want to make sure that we get judgments that's not hollow, that we can execute against assets. Now, in terms of Tegeta, it is a going concern at the moment. It is operating, I think, 1 or 2 other mines. So it's got assets, including the Brakfontein mine is an asset within in the company. The only concern, but it's not a major concern, is that it is under business rescue at the moment, but it is operational. So in terms of the exact answer to the question of the honourable member, whether a judgment would necessarily be satisfied, I'm convinced as it stands now that it would be substantively satisfied, Honourable Chair and honourable members. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wells. Honourable Chair, as you could hear, that we will really pull out every stop to ensure that the assets, if there are assets, they should be, the records should be gotten to those assets, and that they should be part of the recoveries, and then be forfeited to the state. So that process, we are watching it to make sure that it gives us the results that we anticipate or that we'd like to see. There was a question relating to the wrong tonnage. On this one, if with your permission, Honourable Chair, I'll ask my colleague with regard to the wrong tonnage. My colleague, Mrs. O'Brien, do you have a comment on the issue of the wrong tonnage delivered to ESKOM?
Yes, I can comment at this point. During the course of the execution of the contract, it did become clear that Korenfontein was running out of contractually compliant coal. So in other words, coal of the right quality. That matter is still under investigation, but currently the supply of coal has come to an end due to the business rescue proceedings that Korenfontein is under. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. I will proceed. There was a question relating to cloud computing on around the kickbacks. Without getting my colleague back on the platform immediately, the investigations are still ongoing. As we said, there will be criminal referrals, because in terms of kickbacks, obviously that's the criminal offence that has been paid to subcontractors to ensure ESKOM contracts for contractor. So from where we are, there's evidence pointing towards that. So what needs to happen is that evidence, because it's of criminal in nature, it's got to be referred to NPA, and I'll come back to that part from the list of questions raised by Honourable Somyo. So in this regard, we will ensure also that if there's any civil litigation process, but the kickbacks are a subject of a criminal offence, and we will ensure that whoever is involved, whether it's individuals or companies, they will have to be charged prosecutorially. Honourable Mente, we will make the list available. We will send it to the committee through the chair, just so that the committee can have the list of the officials that we refer to. Honorable Somio, the referrals to NPA. In the past, when we started our strategy, and that's almost our new strategy, almost 4 years back, we included as part of our functions to ensure that we follow up on these referrals, and that strategy has really seemed to work. We continue to engage with NPA, and we have seen recently there has been arrests being executed in the ESKOM investigation, and those arrests, I think they were publicized because it was really significant that the public should be informed and know that there's criminal consequences, if you like. Those results were as a result of a collaboration and cooperation between SIU and the NPA and the Hawks. In one of the slides, my colleague indicated that we continue to work together with NPA and now Investigative Directorate on the criminal matters. We also make sure that we pull in asset forfeiture unit. However, the parties, when the teams meet, they also look at the civil litigation part. And on the civil litigation part, we ensure that the overlaps and the evidentiary material, because more often the criminal part of the investigation would say, let us not proceed quickly with the civil litigation so that we don't prejudice the criminal process. So we really play a balancing act so that all the affidavits that are obtained, either for civil litigation or for criminal processes, are properly identified, and the asset forfeiture unit can proceed, and we can proceed with the civil litigation. If there's also restrained orders within our civil litigation process, because the asset forfeiture unit does freezes, it does forfeitures. We also, in terms of the special tribunal now, we have similar remedies of freezing and forfeitures, but ours are focused mainly in the civil litigation process. So the legal teams get to ensure that there are no prejudices to these two processes. And we are seeing the results of those, that it has actually even helped to speed up the process with the collaboration that we are seeing. So we will obviously continue to do that. We've got a memorandum of understanding that we have with NPA. We are including the Hawks into the memorandum, and the teams are meeting regularly. If there hasn't been any red flags or issues that have been raised up to my level now, so which really gives me a comfort that the teams are working well and collaborating well together. The speed of reaching finality, Honorable Somio, yes. When we do these matters, either referral for disciplinary process, for civil litigation, or for criminal, the speed of action is something that we are looking at, because we would like to show consequence management as speedily as possible. We have observed, and I have been on record as saying, the scourge of corruption has really resulted, amongst others, by the fact that there has been this seeming impunity. Just people perpetrating acts of corruption and criminality, and just thinking that really nothing will happen to them, because the system had not been showing that there could be actions taken, there could be consequence management. But now we are driving hard to make sure that there's consequences on all fronts, whether it's disciplinary process, which we are following up with ESKOM to ensure that they implement our referrals. We're following up with NPA, and the civil litigation, we're having control of that end to end. Of course, we include ESKOM. Some of these matters that my colleague referred to in the body of the presentation of the civil litigation, we engage those companies together with ESKOM, and we ensure that the civil litigation process is handled speedily, but of course we don't compromise the quality of the recovery. Or individuals not available for disciplinary process. That's the part that we really want to ensure that when we have referred, ESKOM, of course, has got a control that's within their control, but we would like to make sure that these disciplinary processes are done and done speedily. As we have repeatedly said, this phenomenon of officials resigning in the face of disciplinary process, we make sure that they are followed up either criminally or civilly. The issue of failure to declare interest, Honorable Somio, yes, we have made sure that, and this process, we have really, the team has done very well. We've got a methodology that we use in terms of detecting whether officials do business with the state, ESKOM in this regard, and there are those who did not declare interest. The finality of that matter is left to ESKOM, indeed, Honorable Somio, yes, but we work together. We ensure that we monitor that those matters are implemented. Honorable Makau, in terms of are there any time frames to recover and the capacity to ensure that we recover? As we said earlier on, of course, they are subject to civil litigation and court rules and court processes, but at least in the special tribunal, we have managed to speed up those processes. Of course, they are subject to those special tribunals rules in terms of serving papers, and you've got so many days to respond and all of that. But we have made sure that those matters are dealt with speedily. The capacity to recover, to ensure recovery, in this case, our legislation enables us to have internal capacity to have some of our members appearing at the special tribunal or in ordinary courts, but we still do use external counsel. So when we have got a matter to take to civil litigation, through our chief legal, Dr. Wells, we go through the state attorney, and then we appoint counsel. We appoint legal representative to represent SIU, and more often the ESKOM in this regard would be part of the civil litigation process. We more often have one counsel, but of course it does happen that ESKOM also have their own counsel. So that creates an added capacity to ensure that those matters are handled effectively. Are we satisfied with the action of ESKOM in taking either disciplinary processes? At this stage, we are appraised at any point. We've got regular meetings with ESKOM where they indicate to us, and these are the teams, the lead investigator, Ms. O'Brien in this regard, with Mr. Legato, when he's available. There is a team that meets regularly to ensure that we are appraised of what ESKOM is doing. Honorable Zipula, in terms of 7 who resigned on lifestyle audits, yes, I think more often we have observed that these officials, they've got this tendency of resigning whenever they realize that some evidence has been found out, or they've been found out, either on the irregularities or even criminal matters, and then they just put in resignation. The unfortunate part is that by law, if you put in a resignation, it's very, really difficult to sort of say, no, you can't resign. The courts have really not come out very clearly in terms of whether employers can decline or refuse anybody to resign. So they resign and go on. But of course, we, as I indicated, at the risk of repeating, we make sure that we follow them up on other processes, criminal or civil. Honorable Chair, the consequence management is something that we really put premium on. And we would like to make sure that the consequence management proceeds, because that is the part. If action is taken against officials who are caught up with wrongdoing, with misconduct, then we will show that there is no impunity. If prosecution follows on the arrests, we show and indicate that there is no impunity. And we have also said we will go forward and recover. And the process to do that, we have established the special tribunal so that we enable this part of ensuring recoveries. If we do that and do that well, and we would like to demonstrate that we are doing it well, so that we show and demonstrate this this consequence management. So we can give the Honorable Chair and Honorable Members the assurance that our investigations are thorough. And of course, when it's a criminal matter, where we have evidence pointing to criminality, we then take that to NPA, but we don't just leave it there. We work together with the NPA and make sure that when they assess the evidence that we have presented, because they also have to make sure that they satisfy themselves that the evidence is sufficient to return the charges that we would like to prefer against those who are caught up in wrongdoing. So we can give that assurance, Honorable Chair, to ensure that ultimately these prosecutions or even civil recoveries and disciplinaries, whenever they are presented in court or in disciplinary forums, we should be able to sustain the outcomes that we require, because we would like to see, as we have said, appropriate consequence management. The issue for us is results. We agree with that, Honorable Chair. We would like to see tangible results that are supported by credible evidence. It is very, very critical that we obtain our evidence credibly so that we can sustain the prosecution, conviction, sentencing, and the recoveries. Synchronized efforts amongst law enforcement agencies. Yes, indeed. We would like to continue to improve on that, because if we don't synchronize, then we've got the potential that one of the processes may suffer, either it's civil litigation process or prosecution, because the evidentiary material of those processes is very, very important to manage appropriately, and even with the freezing and forfeitures of assets, we need to work together to ensure that there are no prejudices. If there are overlaps between all of us, they must be managed such that we produce the results that we want. Will this translate into successful prosecutions? Honorable Chair, yes, we have indicated that we would like to make sure that the evidence that's handed over, it's secured credibly so that it can translate into successful prosecution. With the question whether we are receiving cooperation from ESKOM, I can confirm that we are receiving cooperation, and at this stage, we're really making sure that we all have the same objective of ensuring that we return ESKOM to its functionality, making sure that it produces the services of supply of electricity to the people effectively. And that cannot be done if the corruption and the irregularities that had attended ESKOM before are not left unattended. If they are left unattended, then that objective will not be achieved. Chair, I'd like to just indicate that we also work very closely with the Zondo Commission to ensure that the evidence and the affidavits or whatever it is that we need to compare with them. We've been working with them. They know the content of our investigation, just to ensure that there's coverage by all of us who are busy making sure that corruption is dealt with in this space. And in terms of holding people to account, we have said to the teams internally that when we investigate, we must make sure that everyone at all levels are held to account, whether it's officials up to the accounting authority, up to the directors, up to the executive authorities, of course, supported by credible evidence. And we have seen it. We've seen it in the recent civil litigation, which we have done together with ESKOM, that 12 parties into that case include everyone who has been pointed by evidence, executives, officials, executive authorities. So we are satisfied. What is left now is to ensure that we propel those processes to produce the results. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to respond to the honorable members. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, advances, and of course the assurances that you have given. Colleagues, if there are any other comments or hands, because this is a meeting in preparation for Friday, as we interact with ESKOM on the basis of the reporting format we have structured for them. And so consequence management and investigations is at the very heart of what we want to see as a key focus for ESKOM. So are there any further comments, colleagues? Right, I would assume there's none. I just want to maybe colleagues, Ma'am Makha, are you fine? Colleagues, I just wanted to, I mean, there's the issue of people who are constantly resigning on the basis of investigations, running away from disciplinary processes. Something's got to give, because this is, and people are, to borrow my own phrase, jumping around like popcorn everywhere, to run away from consequence management. And I think this is something we have looked at before, but I think it is something we need to actually pay a particular focus to. And I think we do need to interact with the Department of Labor, Public Service Administration, and COGTA, so that we can tie this down. If it means that we must set into motion a committee, a bill of some sort, then we must do so. But the process cannot be squandered, and consequence management cannot be sacrificed at the altar of an escape on the part of those who do wrongdoing and then emerge somewhere else. This constant recycling of people in the public service who have got clouds hanging over them, but because the process is compromised by these resignations, certainly cannot be right. And so I think we do need to look at that issue, more attentively than we probably have in the past, because it does just keep coming up. So I'm just going to request colleagues that let's apply our minds to that, so that we can assist the process of disciplinary processes and consequence management in a more structured way than what is currently actually prevailing. I think, at municipalities, it's even worse. People just doing whatever they want to do. And if it means that we go along the lines of blacklisting people, then we must do so. But they can't be a blank check to new employment when you've got matters pending where you come from. It's the same government, it's the same public purse, and therefore we certainly need to do away with this, territorial lager mentality that you do wrong here, but the implications don't follow you wherever you will go. So I think let us do that. There's issues of pension involved here as well. If it means that clear yourself first before your pension is released amongst it, then that must happen. But something's got to give, a particular one, that people are abusing the system. As I'm saying, I think we should to look at this labor and COGTA so that we can tie it down to the confidence that consequent willy-nilly approach. So that's just on my side I wanted to raise, colleagues. I think then, in the absence of further hand, hope that Advocate Mutend on Friday when we interact with ESKOM, because these met, what we want is to move away from the feel-good syndrome of arrests and successful prosecutions. So hope that the law enforcement put this step in the right direction approach. Yeah, sorry about that. The network cut on my end, right, colleagues? In the absence of hands, I've just checked the group and there are no hands. So without any further ado, colleagues, the meeting stands adjourned and we shall meet on Friday to discuss ESKOM matters. Thank you very much and do take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.